Okay. Hello, welcome everyone this afternoon. I have the wonderful Melissa Newman with me. We've had just a very brief catch up before this video. So hello, thank you for
Hi,
joining me.
thank you for having me.
Hello. We have tried a few attempts at Facebook Live, and I just could not get it to work. So here we are in Zoom, and we will share this to the group, and Melissa will be able to share it too. So just to introduce you, Melissa Newman has had a very personal story or journey with grief, and you now have is your business called Rising Strong Holistic Healing?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But she's very devoted to helping people to heal a broken heart from grief and to transform their lives into like a renewed sense of self. And of course, also rebirthing the soul. So I just loved that when I had a look at your what you're all about.
Yep.
Would you like to share with us a little bit about what it is that you or where you are, and just introduce to us what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I help souls who've become dissociated from themselves. So my gift is my ability to help people go through their grief journey. And particularly if there's any trauma associated to that. And that would be particularly loss to suicide, because that's been my experience.
Yeah.
But that whole journey, which was the loss of my son, Brett, he passed away 5 years ago in 2017. And so that activated took me through the dark night of the soul. It literally was. It was the day that he died was also the day I died my death. It really was. And so hence the dark night of the soul.
I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that journey, when I say the death of myself, that is like the death of all perception that we have created in this lifetime. And it, in a nutshell, of what I've learned now, on a deeper level, it's the death of our egoic self, because our egoic self creates this illusionary world around us, and that gives us so much meaning, like our homes, people, our careers, that's what we define as our life. But in essence, it's not the true meaning of life. So so the death of myself was exactly that, where I had literally nothing left within my soul, but I actually believe it was one little spark of amber still there.
Yeah.
And so I went on a journey for the 5 years into soul spiritual expansion. And that was in effect instigated through the turning point that I was going through during that grief period, the initial period, because everything was gone. I was, and I have my other son here. And so we were both journeying that, my adult son, and what I found is I was starting to have suicidal thoughts. I didn't want to be here anymore, but I was actually quite torn, because I had one son on one side of the world, or in this world, and I had my other son in the other realm. I wanted to be with him, but I couldn't leave my other boy. And so this created my turning point. And it was quite literally, I realized then that, well, one, it wasn't an option to be able to leave this world. So if I couldn't leave this world, what does this all mean? What does this life mean? And so my journey began. And so I chose life. And that's the thing, that's actually an important thing that actually takes place in grief, is there's a very small window when we're fresh in the grief that creates two options for us. And it is quite literally, we actually have a little window where we will choose life or we won't. And so that's actually will happen to everyone. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that aren't able to come out of that grief. And there's many, many reasons for that, and many valid reasons why one can't come out of that. And so
I mean, you often hear of, say, elderly married couples where, you know, the one partner may pass on, and it's not long after that the other one, and many times people say they died of a broken heart.
Yeah, that is so true.
A little bit, and it's a bit different at you know, at the when you're nearing end of life, but most certainly it's very different when you're in a predicament like what you were in.
Yeah. It's, well, that's the thing. Grief is very unique for everyone.
100%.
There is not one process that is meant for everyone. Everyone has to actually journey it for themselves uniquely, however long that takes. Some people can move through it quite easily, or feel they have moved through it, and then years later down the track, it will come and bite them and resurface if they haven't dealt with anything. So it's extremely important that you actually process these emotions. And at the end of the day, it's just emotions. You really do have to process that and journey through it.
And was there much of a difference in the way that you, well, I suppose that we know that there would have been, but you said that obviously your other son, so he journeyed through it with you. So, you know, how was that sort of going through that with him?
Yeah, well, see, my son actually, he was with the Navy at the time. So he actually came home from the Navy, and he ended up coming up here to the coast, and he lived with me for, I can't remember, I think it might have been 3 or 4 months. And then he sort of kind of reintegrated back into work and went back to, then he actually didn't want to go back full time to the Navy. And then he just kind of reintegrated into his work with the Navy and tried to sort of move on. But that journey, that's the thing, his journey and my journey, both experiencing, you know, like that horrible grief and everything that comes with it. But his journey is completely different to mine, because as a mother, and when we lose our children, that is actually one of the highest forms of stress that anyone can go through in this lifetime. So then, but for him, you know, like he hasn't lost in that regard, because there's a very special connection, especially between a mother and her children. Just because we birth the children, that whole connection thing, it doesn't mean it's more or less than the father either. But his journey was as a brother. And for me to actually even fully understand his journey, I wouldn't really fully, it's just so very different, because he wouldn't understand how much pain I was going through. So, so we just knew, it wasn't fun.
No, I imagine. I can definitely understand how it would be the dark night of the soul, especially that type of grief. It would be very, very hard.
Yeah, well, because unfortunately, because I'm writing a book, and a lot of this is going to be in my book. And when there is loss to suicide, oh wow, the trauma associated to that. Because one difference in that is they chose to leave the world. So that leaves us with so many unanswered questions. We feel like we failed them. We feel guilty. We feel like how could we have done better? Why didn't they communicate with us? Like the amount of questions is tormenting, absolutely tormenting. And then with that, I actually experienced a lot of stigma and a lot of blame from my direct family. Like it was, and even just people in community, only because they don't really understand suicide. Not many people do, and not many people are willing to understand it. So there was those many times where, you know, the different comments people would say, you know, to you, like, maybe I'm going to be very mindful what I say here because I don't want to trigger anyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, but let's just say people would say things that are actually quite cruel. They don't realize how harmful, you know, to blame me and judge me for my son's choice. At the end of the day, yeah, that's that's not really helpful.
No.
Yeah.
No, well, and at the end of the day, you know, that we all have our own will. And so your son had his will, and you can't, we all know, I think one of the biggest lessons when we're a parent with regard with our children is that they do become their own, you know, person, and we really, there's not, we can try, but ultimately they make these all their life decisions.
Exactly. And he was an adult. He was 24, you know, and yeah, so yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so what would you say would be, can you think of anything, any defining moments when you felt like you sort of had that turning point, the breakthrough point, or where you felt like everything had fallen away and then it was time to rebuild, to get from, and you could see that there was still that little spark of light within.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely the turning point was when I started to have the suicidal thoughts, not wanting to be here. It was literally, I was sitting and yeah, just sort of, I guess, in those emotions, deep in those emotions. And I was just like, well, I was analyzing, you know, like, what does that mean? Am I going to take my life? I'm like, I don't think I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, how did he do? Yeah. And so
Yes.
I was sitting there and I was like, but then there's my other son. It's like, knowing the immense pain that I was in, if I was to do that now and then compound his pain, it's just like, I can't do that to him.
Yeah. So it ultimately became like a moral choice.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, right, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I gave myself two options, and the first one was, so I decided at that point, well, that wasn't an option to leave the earth. And so it's like, okay, I now need to find meaning. What does this all mean? And so that started me on my journey to discover what my purpose was to be here, because my life, to be honest, had been quite challenging most of my life from different life experiences. And so this also, all of my past traumas had all come to the surface. So I had so much to deal with. And
wow, so the grief brought up everything.
Yeah, especially if it's trauma related.
Yeah.
If you've had trauma earlier in your lifetime somewhere, it will come to the surface to be dealt with. And so for me, I had to work through the childhood that I had that was quite disempowering. I had to work through the sexual abuse that took place when I was 14. I had to work through then the two divorces that impacted my life. And I just felt like I was just not worthy anymore on this planet. I really did. And actually, it's interesting because it still gets me, even though I know I am worthy. And I've come this far.
It's a painful, I suppose we know that all of these, you know, experiences do leave, you know, this little bit of an imprint on the nervous system. And even when you do the work, you know, it's still part of who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Even
see,
though you've rewritten the story, that you've kind of recovered and healed from those experiences.
oh, absolutely.
Point, but yeah.
And so working through all of those experiences, I then decided, okay, what am I going to do with my life? So then I decided I wanted to move into compassionate action. That's the two words that describe with wanting to help others. So I wanted to then move more into the suicide prevention space. I did come from the mental health background.
Yeah.
So I started focusing in community on suicide prevention. And I actually did cover all of the Sunshine Coast, Wide Bay, all the way as far as Bundaberg, creating communities and connections for people who were touched by suicide. But then I still didn't feel like I was hitting my purpose. There was something still quite missing. And so, and now it led me to where I need to be, which is my grief therapy and this whole journey, how I take people through it. Yeah.
Oh, so you've really taken something and, something that was obviously immensely painful in your life, and you've managed to rewrite that story and turn it around and get with something that gives you a real sense of purpose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a beautiful, painful but beautiful transition.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did have a little look at some of the other areas. So you've obviously done the mental health, but you've done the pranic healing and root cause therapy.
Yeah.
And they kind of come into play with what you offer now. So would you like to share a little bit about the different things that you've come across on this journey that you've found to be really effective ways to help people process and move through their grief?
Yeah. So what actually took place for my journey was with my soul expansion journey, as I call it. I don't like the word awakening because it's not really a one-time thing.
Yeah.
And it still is an ongoing thing. So it's a continual expansion of myself. And so what I was doing to heal myself, because I had zero support, I had absolutely zero support. I didn't feel safe around people. And that was an impact that started from childhood. And then when I was going through all of the blame and the judgment, I actually completely retreated from the world because I just didn't feel safe around anyone because I was being attacked. So anyway, so I went on my journey, and what that looked like every day was I started really getting into my meditations and breath work with nature. Nature was huge for my healing. And every day, whatever emotion was coming up through my meditation, I actually sat and dissected what that looked like. So I went in and felt it and experienced it, and included the people that those experiences involved, and went on this kind of little journey where I actually took myself on a timeline journey back to these events and tried to remember as much as I could to try to gain the truth of the event, the truth from my perspective and the other person's perspective. So this is kind of like this root cause therapy. And so I did this for like a couple of years, and to just keep working through all these emotions.
Yeah.
And literally unlearning all my old program patterns, old stories, and recreating new truths. And then 2 years sort of down the track, I discovered this modality called root cause therapy. And when I saw it, like, oh my God, that's what I did. Oh, is that a thing? I was just like, okay, I've got to do that one. So I qualified myself for that. That was a no-brainer. And that started to then lead me towards my grief work. So then I was just like, okay, makes more sense to me how I can help people. And so that's the root cause therapy that I do to this day. And it is so powerful to be able to take someone on a timeline journey to get to the root cause of their emotion when it first started, to release it. Once you understand all those truths and you take perspectives from both sides, no blame, no judgment. You don't need to do that. I take them through a forgiveness journey in that moment, and then self-love. We come out of the event and we come back to now. And then what I found, when you come back to the present moment again, is you'll still have a few days where you're integrating. Emotions will come up, you'll cry, you'll feel sad, and then all of a sudden, boom, you feel light. And it's just like everything just got lifted. And it's just like, oh, I feel amazing. I was like, what the, what just happened? And so I was just like, that is just number one to my work.
Yeah.
And then the reason why I got into the pranic energy healing is the chakras are super important to, especially with grief. Grief is lodged in our heart and our lungs, and you need to breathe it through. And so that's what I was actually doing without even realizing. And so I qualified myself for that one too. And so they're my two key things, along with my program, my mentorship, where I actually take everyone through that whole deep dive, journaling, meditating, releasing journey, and yeah, to get them into activating their love within themselves, forgive everyone for the past because it's in the past. Let's just move on and start again. And that's basically, yeah, what I do. And I do it really well because I've got...
Forgiveness is really a very interesting concept, because I think we kind of, in a way, well, I know this was my experience. We kind of grow up thinking that when to forgive someone, you know, that person has to be sorry for what they've done. But when you know, in adult life, things probably get a little bit more complex, and you sometimes realize that there's just situations where the other person will never say sorry. And we realize that we're left with like an energetic imprint from the experience, and it's up to us to process the forgiveness so that we can energetically release it. And you know, you might never see that person again, but the forgiveness is just really that it's almost like an aspect to grief, isn't it? Because you have to let go.
Exactly.
And I suppose because we know grief is so complex, it's just you know, forgiveness could very much be a part of the fabric of what needs to be, you know, you need to weave through to help heal the grief.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess too, like with this whole journey, so like I really came to understand what I guess this whole life is about. And we all have a soul mission to achieve on this life. And that soul mission, we each have a unique gift that is here to be shared with humanity. And when you can discover what that is, it's just so profound, because you know you're in your absolute truth doing what is, you know, like it's just absolute. There's just so much knowing. But what I found on my journey through this spiritual expansion was I never really understood that life was meant to be an ebb and flow. You know, some of us experience extreme ebb and flow. We have the most worst challenges, but that's actually written in our soul contract. And see, that's a whole nother kettle of fish when you start learning what we're actually here for. And so all of those experiences that we are given in our life is actually meant to happen so that we can evolve into our highest conscious self. And when I realized this, it's just like, and that's the thing, we don't really see it that way. We just think life's challenging. It's like, darn it, you know, you try and move through it. Some of us, you know, blame, shame. Some of us can move through it and just go, okay, let's just make the best of this. These are my cards. But it's actually so that you can come into your most highest self. And when you realize that, you start looking at these experiences very differently, and you look at people differently. And so these people that come to us, they're also on their journey, and we're actually going to show them something that they need to change within them, vice versa. And wow, and this just whole discovery, when you can really start to connect with that and understand that, your life will change completely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I had a really interesting conversation with a lady called Elan, who's going to be doing a talk, and she's studied numerology, and she touched on that, a very similar
Mm,
aspect to grief, and how, and the same thing that you've just said, that when you can, it helps you to make sense a little bit of the and to, you know, understand that this, as painful as it is to have to go through it, there is like this sort of understanding that there's this kind of soul contract, that it's ultimately what you signed up for in this life. It sort of gives you a little bit of just a slightly different way to look at it.
mm,
They're very interesting. And I know that can be hard probably for some people. That could be quite triggering to hear that, oh, well, you
mm.
signed up for this. I imagine in those moments of anger, it's probably the last thing you want to hear.
Yeah, that's actually interesting you say that, because I used to hear that a lot. And it's just like when I was, see, now I don't have a problem with that.
Mm,
But go back 3 years, it's just like I actually was quite angry. It's just like there's no way in the world I would have signed up for this.
yeah,
That's just ridiculous. I do not believe that.
yeah.
But then continuing and continuing along my journey is just like, if I now look back, it's just like I needed all of those experiences of not ever feeling loved by anyone, of never fitting in with people, so that I can create my most loving community of souls now, because I've journeyed through so much pain of not having it, that I know how important it is to have it, and I know
Mm,
how to get
mm,
there. And so that's really interesting. So,
yeah.
wow, I'm just so privileged. Oh my God.
Yay. So tell me a
Oh.
little bit about what it is that you're creating now, because I know you've got a lot of stuff on and it's happening in the moment right now.
Yeah. So yes, whilst I was on this journey, so my biggest changes in my life really started happening in the beginning of last year. And I was really creating my business, which was just right on the tail end of COVID. I just went boom, decided, okay, I need to actually create my own business. Didn't really want to work for organizations anymore for many different reasons, which has taught me the value of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So again, that was actually, those experiences taught me very important lessons about your spiritual integrity and values. And so I made that decision to sort of create my business. And funnily enough, yeah, like it was flowing, but then it wasn't. And so this journey last year, Spirit had lots of other ideas of how and when I was supposed to fully step into my role. A lot actually took place July last year, with different things coming in through my intuition, which had told me literally that I needed to sell my home, and I'm going to India, and didn't know why I was going to India. And anyway, I went on this journey, and wow, so profound, which is actually literally created what I need to do now. So what I'm doing now is, since I've come back from India, which was 3 months over there, I was shown exactly what I need to be doing here. So I'm creating a community of souls on land, because I'm very connected to Mother Earth. And on land, which I was already doing, was my Temple of Fire. So to help people understand what a Temple of Fire is, I came from the mental health space, where we used to do support groups. Never liked the support groups. They were so clinical. It's just like, this is not real. Like it needed love. It needed connection. We're not just sitting in this circle going around, and what those support circles can feel like sometimes. So what my Temple of Fire is kind of that, but it has so much love and connection. But the idea of the Temple of Fire is around fire. It is a group circle for anyone grieving, and we go through the purging. Okay, it creates opportunity if you want to share your story. You can. If you don't, that's okay. But the whole idea is to go through the purging with Mother Earth, the fire, and sacred. I've got lots of sacred rituals, which were further shown to me when I was in India. And oh my God. And so that's kind of my circle. And it's very sacred. It's a very safe space where I will help people start to move all of this stuff through. And then with that is my my mentorship. So my mentorship is my program, which literally takes people, starts the journey for them to actually activate their divinity, to literally find their light in their soul, in their heart, and connect them back to themselves. And then with that, it will ignite their spiritual gift for this world, which will create the ripple effect. And then from that, the last part of that journey that came through was that I will be taking these souls back to India, where there will be a final initiation every year. So that's part of the journey.
Wow.
And yeah, and then the community of souls is literally bringing all communities in. So I'm in a location now where it's 5 minutes from Gympie. It will allow people from Hervey Bay, they're only 45 minutes away, all the farmers to come in, people from Gympie to come in, Sunshine Coast, Rainbow Beach, and I'm creating a hub that will showcase and bring collaboratively many other services to offer their gifts, a space where I create the retreats and healing space, and then all of my work that I do. So literally I'm just creating a very face-to-face connected community, because that is what is actually missing. It's getting too much online, and people are more and more becoming so disconnected.
Yeah.
So my mission is to bring community of people back together.
Oh, there's nothing like, the that sense of connection that we have when we do meet in person and in groups as well, in a real and authentic way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's nice to you can still have that in between mentorship, I think, in the online, but once you've met in person, it sort of does seem to change that dynamic a little bit. So
yeah.
and I suppose grief is such a raw thing that you do just need to be one of the key things that came up the other day in the conversation was like that acknowledgement, really just and we also with Soraya, it was like the words "I see you."
Yes, I actually, that's big for me. Namaste. You'll see that in many of my posts if anyone looks back. It's because what that means is, which has always been me, is when I smile at someone, even a stranger on the street, that is acknowledging the divinity within them. That is saying, I see you for who you are, the truth, not the stuff all on the outside, all of this stress and what have you. That's always going to be there. I see you under the surface, and you are a beautiful divine soul. And I just think that's amazing.
I know. Makes me get my heart go.
I know.
I as a yoga teacher and therapist, I'd get a little bit frustrated when that whole thing came about, like, you can't say namaste at the end of a class because it's actually meant to be a hello or something. And I'm like, that's not even true.
Yeah, that's it.
Is the light in me honors the light in you. And I love the way Myra actually puts it as well, like when and in this space we are one. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful way to just break down those walls, and that's what we need when we're grieving, whether it's the loss from death or an identity or whatever. We need to be seen.
Absolutely. Oh.
Well, it sounds amazing. And I did read on one of your posts that an Uluru retreat, is that still going to happen, or are you going to do the India instead, or maybe both?
Yeah, well, see, my whole journey has been about following my sparks of intuition, and
Mm,
Uluru has just come up and come up and come up. Yeah, time and time again last year. And was like, okay, my understanding was I'm to take people to Uluru to do a retreat.
yeah.
That's part of the journey, which made sense to me from, from my background, and being so connected to Mother Earth. But I also, I believe I have a past lifetime connected to Indigenous.
Mm,
Yeah, without getting into all those details. So I've actually at the moment got tentative booked to collaborate in Uluru for about 5 days with Indigenous elder women. Um, I've had visions and seen them. They know I'm coming. I believe there is a definite connection. Something is taking place. Now, whilst I thought that was going to be a retreat for taking my clients there, I think the India thing is definitely confirmed that that's how that's going to work. And so the story behind Uluru still on the cards. I'm not going to rule out the retreat yet, because that's what is fantastic about spirit is you get little seeds here and there, and it
mm,
just slowly unfolds. So yeah, with Uluru, I believe yeah, there's going to be an activation of some sort, and that's probably a longer story to share, but and that might be more through me for the collective, so like for humanity, that will take place. I'm not entirely sure, but that's what I believe is going to take place at the moment.
mm, mm.
um
Uluru
yeah,
is, I always understood it to be the solar plexus chakra of the earth.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
So like if you get right into it, um it actually holds nodes. A node, there is a node there. It's actually been there,
mm,
implanted there millions of years ago, and there's many of these nodes and nulls around the whole world. Some have been
mm,
activated. I can't remember off the top of my head which ones. A node and a null are connected, like the feminine and the masculine. And so each of us as individuals, actually, and there's a lot of us that don't even realize, we actually hold keys and codes. And when you start discovering your gifts, you'll start to realize that you might actually be a shaman or something, and you actually have very specific codes that actually need to be released into humanity now with this new
mm.
earth rising. And this is where it gets really goes into depth. And so for me, I guess, just to keep it quite short, is I believe there will be an activation. So yeah, so I'm really starting to be shown different things that will take place. I've even been guided that I need to clean my whole body and go on a juicing diet so that I'm more open and receptive. So I don't know,
Wow.
just like India, I'll see what unfolds. I'm just open. Okay, just
Yes.
you show
Yes.
me, I'll go.
Yeah, well, it all sounds very exciting. Uluru holds a special place in my heart because I lived out there when I was 20 for
Oh
about
yeah,
9.5 months, and
yeah.
yeah, it is. At that time in my life, I just always remember that it just felt like such a deeply spiritual place. There was something very, very special about it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing with the Indigenous, they're extremely wise,
Mm,
and they're actually ready to share their wisdom, because
yeah.
yeah, so and by sharing meaning, it also means that we're actually coming together as one, which is
Yeah.
really important. So
Oh.
whoa.
Wow, so very, very, thank you so much, Melissa. I've loved hearing all about your story with grief, and the amazing way that you have transmuted or transformed all of that
Yeah.
into a really positive, really empowering manifestation
Mm.
of service to humanity now in your life, which is just beautiful. So, and as I've said to many, that, you know, each of the speakers in this series, you know, there might just be something about Melissa that resonates for people watching. And if you're going through that grief journey, we will make sure that we've got some details there, so you know how to reach out with Melissa, whether it's now at the time that we're doing this, or even if it's in a year's time, because these recordings will always be available to watch. You just never know. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Because it's true in saying that, because I remember a now very strong role model that I have. She was shared with me early in that stage of grief, and at the time it's just like, yeah, I kind of, yeah, it's just like, yeah, I don't know, yeah, I understand some of you what you're saying, but I don't understand a lot. But something in my heart just says I can't let you go. So what I just did was I just kept following. And that's probably an important thing. You might not understand, for our listeners, you might not understand, you know, why you're getting the connection, but just keep open to it, because as time goes, things start to make more sense. And then now she's my strongest role model, and it's like, wow, go figure. So so just be always as open as you can to receive, and then when your soul's ready, you'll know. It just happens. Oh,
it's like whenever we're all work to do with you know, transformation requires a readiness. Whether it's guilt that you're you know, want to move through, or anything else, you arrive at a point when you know you are ready. And so it's just you're staying sort of tuned in and open until that point arrives.
Yay.
Great. Well, thank you so much once again, and as promised, I will make sure that we pop all of your details in the post.
Perfect. Thank you. Much love
Thanks.
to you and everyone.
Thanks, Melissa.